Who is the wisest person you know? In what way is he or she wise? How do you think someone can become wise? Hello everyone, I'm Kathleen Pelly. Welcome to Journey with Story. Today's episode is a story from Finland about a very wise princess who can speak many languages and whose father insists that she marry someone who can speak a language that she cannot. But no young men can accomplish this task until one day a young shepherd comes by claiming he knows a language the princess does not. I wonder what language it is. Thanks to all of our listeners who have been rating, reviewing and sharing this podcast with others. Huge thanks to Yanka, age 10, for writing this marvellous review. Hi, Kathleen T. Pelly. I'm 10 years old. My name is Yanka. I would like to say this is the best podcast ever. I listen to this podcast every night with my two brothers who are 8 and 5. My favourite story is Mr. Lazybones, Cat and the Parrot, The Elephant and the Dog. I hope I can hear it on another story, so please do me a shout out. Thank you, Yanka. This episode is dedicated especially to you. And if you haven't already done so, do take a moment to rate and review our show wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks ever so much. Now let's take a journey with the wise princess. And the little girl in this story has a Finnish name, Maria. Once upon a time, a king had one daughter whose name was Maria. He wished her to be the wisest woman in the world, and so he sent far and wide for the finest scholars to teach her all they knew. Maria loved learning, and most of all, she loved the many languages of the world. She learned Greek, English, Spanish, French, and Japanese. She learned Portuguese, Latin, German, and Chinese. Before long, Maria knew more than all her teachers combined. She could speak to every visitor in his own language. The king soon understood that Maria must find a husband who was as wise as she. He sent out a proclamation. Princess Maria will marry the man who can speak a language she does not know. Beware, suitors, anyone who dares to seek the hand of the princess but cannot speak a new tongue will be thrown into the wintry sea. Princes and dukes, knights and lords heard the proclamation and sighed. They shook their heads and grumbled among themselves.
No one knows as many languages as the princess,
they all agreed. And so no one came to seek Maria's hand in marriage. Poor Maria grew lonely and sad. Father, will no one marry me? She asked. Her father took his daughter's hand in his. I fear that may be true, my child, he said sadly. There seems to be no man wise enough for you. Meanwhile, outside the palace, a young shepherd, carrying a leather satchel on his back, appeared at the gates. I am Matti, the lad announced to the king's guards. I have come to seek the hand of the wise princess, Maria. The king's guards laughed. One of them said,
Get back to your flocks, boy. You're a simple shepherd. You could never hope to win such a wise woman as our princess. Run before the king throws you into the sea.
But Matti smiled. "Open the gates," he said. "I can speak many languages the princess has never heard before." The guards shook their heads.
"Give up, boy,"
another said. But the young shepherd refused to leave until finally the guards let him into the king's throne room, where he saw the princess sitting beside her father. Immediately Maria smiled at the shepherd, for she saw a certain light in his eyes and the shadow of a smile on his lips that pleased her.
"Your Majesty,"
the guards announced,
"this lad has come to woo your daughter."
Princess Maria was delighted by the handsome lad, but she was also afraid for him. "Father," she whispered, "please don't harm him. He seems kind and so very brave." The king looked at Matty and frowned. "If you dare fail to speak an unknown language, son, do you know what will happen to you?" Matty smiled. "I do," he said, "and I am not afraid of the sea. Besides, I believe you will find that your daughter does not know all there is to know." The king shrugged. "Speak your language then," he said. Matty quickly walked to the princess's side. "Beautiful princess," he said, "listen closely." He reached into his satchel and he pulled out a tiny sparrow. The sparrow chirped. Matty turned to the princess. "Do you understand?" he asked. The princess shook her head. "But princess," Matty said calmly, "you claim to understand all languages. The sparrow asks if he can alight upon your shoulder." He let go of the sparrow and whispered. And the sparrow flew at once to the princess and alighted upon her shoulder. Maria clapped her hands. "How wonderful!" she cried. "Wait," Matty said, raising his hand. He again reached into his satchel and pulled out a shiny black crow. The crow cried. Matty patted the bird's head. "So sorry," he said, and he gently placed the crow upon the floor. "You understood, of course?" Matty asked the princess. She shook her head. "No," she said softly. "He wants his freedom," Matty said, and he walked to the door and opened it. He cried. When the crow heard these words, he flew out the door to his freedom. Again the princess stared. "How do you know what they say?" she asked. Matty smiled again. "I have spent my days in the forest listening carefully. I can speak the language of the beasts and birds. If you marry me, I will teach you, for there are many languages even the greatest scholars do not know." The king was furious. He turned to his daughter. "I thought you were the most learned person in the world," he cried. "How can you let a lowly shepherd make a fool of you?" Matty once again stepped forward. "Sire, your daughter is wise beyond words," he said. "For only the wise can admit that they do not know everything." Maria was so pleased with Matty's understanding that she begged her father to allow her to marry him. The king, seeing the joy in his daughter's face, knew he was wrong to have judged Matty so harshly. "You have won my daughter," he said, "and I wish you both great joy." Matty and Maria married and lived happily ever after, always surrounded by the birds and beasts, always seeking wisdom, always wise enough to know that they could always learn more. Oh, wasn't that lovely to see how Maria and Matty found each other? And wasn't it interesting to see how Matty proved that he did know another language, the language of birds? What do you think this story's souvenir is? The little nugget of truth about what it means to be human? Yes, surely it must have something to do with the fact that wise people never stop seeking more wisdom, and wise people know that there's always more to learn, no matter who we are or how old we are. And stories like these can always teach us so many things that we do not know. Now, don't forget to send us your drawings at www.journeywithstory.com. Go to the Contact Us page, fill in the form, and attach your drawing there so we can share it with others and maybe even give you a shout out. Cheerio then. Join me next time for Journey with Story. Music and post-production was by Colette Jonas.